Hi, this is Dr. Frank A. Thomas, and I am just excited to present to you another installment on the Preaching as Celebration series. This afternoon, we're going to talk about too much bad news in the sermon. This is one of the most common preaching mistakes I hear in preachers. Too much bad news in the sermon. It comes from there's something innate in us that we seem to be better at the bad news than we are at the good news. And because we're better at bad news, we seem to be much more able to describe and to articulate the bad news than we are to describe and articulate the good news. I'll give you an example. I was teaching a class down in Dallas, Texas one time, and I was talking about hope and celebration and good news. And a person raised their hand and said that when they preach, they love and like to make sure that the listeners would feel and smell the singe of the fires of hell on their garments. This was a fire and brimstone preacher. I mean, he said, I love for them to feel the fires of hell and their garments have smoke in them when he was preaching, and everybody laughed, and it was a great moment. I laughed too. But then I thought, I wish that we could be as sense descriptive about the gentle breeze of grace that blows over the balcony of heaven as we are about being descriptive about hell. We can describe hell and make people quake. Oh, that we could describe heaven and God's grace with the same amount of descriptiveness so people can feel the gentle breeze of grace from heaven blowing on them. But because we're better at the bad news, we typically describe the bad news long in length and in great detail, and then we offer people a tiny, itty-bitty piece of hope and grace. I believe that your sermon should be filled with so much grace. Not that we should ignore the bad news, not that we should ignore, that's called the situation. Let me give you just a suggestion. I think that the sermon should be no more than 35% bad news, and it should be early. The sermon should be no more than 35% bad news, and it should be early. I got that from my mentor, Henry H. Mitchell, and I agree with him. So the further you go in the sermon, the more good news you should share. People come to church for hope. People come to the gospel because it expresses good news. Let's be better at the good news than we are at the bad news. Thank you so much for listening, and I want to remind you each and every Monday morning at 8 o'clock a.m., we have a Periscope call, a live call. We'll talk preaching. Then each week we upload something on SoundCloud, a spiritual vitamin on SoundCloud. Then on Monday we release another video in this series that you're watching right now, Preaching as Celebration. And on Friday, we also release a video in another series called Living Your Passion. Please subscribe to the platforms. You can get the message that as soon as we upload it, bam, it comes right to you and you can read it, you can watch it, you can look at it, you can share it. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week in the next installment of the Preaching as Celebration series.